And we are live.
Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Radowski, joined by Jason Burmis of WeAreChange.org. Today is July 29th, 2018, 6:25 p.m. Eastern Time, and actually July 30th here in Poland, where I am in Sopot, Trójmiasto, Poland here, and we are going to be live for the next hour, as well as on Facebook, Twitter, and of course our podcast of this episode will be available on iTunes. So share this broadcast with your friends, and of course we're mainly going to be interacting with you guys through YouTube, and of course super chats have priority since we depend on them to survive as an independent news organization, and we're not psychopathic buttholes who are running psychological warfare operations on you like the majority of the mainstream media, including Jason, MSNBC, which came out this week, covered Stormy Daniels 455 times within the last year in all separate segments, and not one mention of the worst humanitarian crisis happening in the world right now, Yemen, which, of course, Donald Trump has his fingerprints on. This, of course, people need to understand. MSNBC, they pride themselves as the, quote, network of resistance, but they're literally not talking about and ignoring the president's worst, most devastating war that's happening right now, that U.S. ground troops are fighting on the ground with, that is supporting Wahhabist efforts with Saudi Arabia, which is the major proponent of almost all the terrorism that happens in the Western world. Meanwhile, they're going to be filling your minds with porn, these issues that absolutely have no relevance in your life, and is just about someone in power putting their orange penis into a professional sex worker. That stuff, they'll definitely cover, Jason, and that's why we need your support, and that's why super chats go first, and that's why we appreciate you guys sharing this video, even though we're all the YouTube censorship. Jason, what's your reaction to that story, and how are you?
Well, I am very good, Luke, and I hope that you had a wonderful birthday with your family all the way out in Poland, your home country. By the way, for those that don't know, you spent the first 11 years of your life out there, so I think that's great that you're out there. To put this into perspective,
I'm not from Russia or Israel, which of course many people like to speculate. I was born here in Trójmiasto, Sopot, Poland, which is a very beautiful place. Jeff Berwick actually joined me here for my birthday. You also, Jason, had a birthday this week as well. Are you a Leo too?
Yeah, I am a Leo. Yeah.
Okay.
Big 3'9", big guy. What are you at, 37?
How dare you, Jason? You don't mention...
What are you, a woman? Oh, I'm sorry. You a little sensitive about your age, big guy? Huh? A little sensitive?
No. It's totally fine. It's totally cool. It's all fine. 32.
32? Well, wow, I got you pegged way... I forget how much younger. You make me feel old, dude. Like, you're just like... You're not even 35 yet, so, like, midlife crisis isn't even there for you. I'll be lucky to make it to 78, so I could be more than halfway done. It's like, the road to 40, I'm like a city block away, brother. You know what I'm saying?
We're going to be wearing diapers soon. Just any moment and any time, Jason. But of course, we of course have a lot of very important topics to talk about, whether it's plastic straws that people are obsessing about, and the plastic straw conspiracy that I like to call, Donald Trump threatening to shut down the government for the wall. We have stories about Mossad, of course, Iran, and so many issues that we want to get into. But really, I want to thank you, Jason, for stepping in this week. I spent a lot of time with family, spent a lot of time with my grandmother. And I remember, like, growing up, and I was like, why am I the person that I am? Why am I so mistrustful of government and authority? I was very lucky, to see my grandma here, spend some time with her. And she is, I have to say, one of my biggest absolute inspirations in the world. She went through the craziest life that anyone could ever go through. She survived fascism and communism, resisted against both of those horrible systems, the left and the right, and paid the price. Had a very, very tough life. But I actually shot and filmed an interview with her a couple years ago when I was down here. But Just being near her, being around her presence really just, humbles me, really just reinvigorated me in this total fight. This is why I'm not a liberal or a conservative. This is why I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, because ultimately both systems suck. My grandma is an insane example of that. When Germany invaded Poland, she was just a little girl. The Germans came in and they tried to make the citizens here sign over their citizenship to German citizenship instead of Polish citizenship. Of course, my family resisted. This ended up getting her father beat up by the SS. She had to see him suffer and then die from internal injuries slowly. The SS came back, grabbed them, beat them up, sent them to a work camp. And this is an 8-year-old girl that had to go through all this. Her mother actually tried to set up a rebellion in the work camp. There was a snitch that snitched on her, so the German officers beat her up. My grandma ran away, hid. She had some German shepherd that the guards were using there that saved her and didn't bite her and attack her, that she hid in a hut trying to get away from all the German officers. When she was torn away from her mother and she had to run away. Her mother was sent to Stuttgart, which is a concentration camp, a very severe working camp up here in northern Poland. She hid away from the German officers for a few days, just surviving because this German shepherd decided not to chew her up. The German officers found her, sent her on a train which was going to another concentration camp. And then she was just one of the luckiest kids out there. And back then, I could get into the story for a while, but I'm going to keep it short as much as I can. Back then, if Polish citizens had more than 3 kids, they didn't have to pay taxes when they were part of the German government and signed over their German citizenship. There was a rich Polish family that paid off some of the guards when she was on the train to a concentration camp. And likely they picked her out. Her story with that family was also insane. And then she was talking about how when fascism fell, communism came in, and communism was just as brutal and just as bad as fascism. Of course, she resisted against that. Back then, if you had one piece of paper against the government, people would just get thrown to jails. Some even, sent to jails for 5 years for even having a leaflet against the government back then. And of course, my family had a whole crap ton of leaflets. Her son, my uncle, was falsely charged with lighting a police officer on a police car and a police officer on fire with Molotov cocktails, which he wasn't guilty of. It was a big public case. I could just keep going on and on and on. I sat with her for hours, and it just utterly humbled me. And we really, 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 really have it lucky, and we need to understand that government is never the answer. And she's still very, very distrusting of government. And listening to her stories and what she went through definitely makes me understand why I am the way that I am. I never really truly understood it. I never really understood why I always had this kind of huge mistrust of government and this huge kind of fight for just justice and something, to fix all the wrongs. But sitting down and talking to my grandma has definitely made me understand a big part of myself. So I definitely recommend spending some time with your family. You probably got some crazy family members too, Jason.
To be honest, Luke, as far as family goes and kind of waking me up, it was on the way to my grandfather's funeral. Probably, maybe 3-4 months after 9/11, and I didn't have that many questions at the time. I was buying into the mainstream media version of events. Had some questions in the first couple of days, but people not alive then. It's hard to believe that, but hey, we're talking about the 17th anniversary coming up in just a couple of months. And I'm sitting in the car with my Uncle Sal. I'll never forget it. A guy who I'd met maybe 2 times in my life. Didn't really know him that well. And all of a sudden he says something about 9/11 and goes, "Oh, they knew." And I'm like, whoa, whoa. And then he starts talking about Oklahoma City with me. And, I had never really thought about either other than what the mainstream media narrative was. This is right around the beginning, of the what, it's got to be the fall of 2001, and I started looking into these things, and this is the same guy that was telling me that aspartame was poison, and that sugar was poison, and that, you know, soda was going to kill people, and saccharin was, you know, going to cause cancer in rats, and that was the precursor to aspartame. So, you know, there were people in my family as well when I was growing up that were dropping truth bombs on me, whether I knew it or not. And the amount of influence that has on you is great, and I think that that's one of the reasons that I was able to question some pretty heavy events and do the kind of work that I've been doing over the past decade plus, just like you have.
Yeah, I definitely do believe that there is a sort of war, whether profit-driven or on purpose for more sinister reasons, on the family unit. So before we get into all the crazy news, spend time with your family, talk to them, learn about them. There's a lot of wisdom when it comes to age. So don't worry, Jason, we're becoming old men, but there's some advantages to that. And again, before we start, spend time with your family, talk to them, communicate them, and you would be surprised how much you would not only learn about yourself, but you would learn about the world when you sit down, especially with the oldest members of your family. So if you ever get a chance to do that, do that. Thank you for filling in this week, doing some videos, allowing me to do that. I'm going to be definitely busting my butt this week, and we're going to be pulling out a lot of content. And in related terms, let's talk about the first story that I really wanted to talk about, and that is the war that's happening right now on plastic straws. Of course, this has been, again, like, there's wars, there's all these incredible, crazy things that has happened throughout history. There's so many different things to talk about. But now society is obsessing about plastic frickin' straws. And to me, the environmental issue is a very important one. But when it comes to government getting involved, it's an absolutely idiotic one. As we're seeing, San Francisco banning plastic straws and cocktail swords. We also had in Santa Barbara that was offering jail time for plastic straw offenders with severe punishments as bad as 1 year and $1,000 fine for giving out one straw. And of course, California's trying to pass other ordinances and laws that would make it a criminal offense to give a straw to people unless they specifically ask for one. And to me, this is utterly ridiculous, because one of the major things that this is being propped up by is a statistic that the mainstream media is running with. We're talking about CNN, Reuters, Washington Post. 15 major media outlets are using a statistic about plastic straws that was based on research from a 9-year-old. You can actually see the New York Times article, how a 9-year-old boy's statistic shaped a debate on straws. And what he did was ultimately just called a bunch of straw manufacturers, and no one ever questioned the validity of his findings, which is being used by government as a way to justify this war on straws, which is really just another way to extort money out of people and throw them into the system, throw them in jail, and extort them and use them. And of course, we're talking about the statistic of 500 million straws being used in the United States, which again was done by a 9-year-old and never confirmed at all. And we saw some private businesses like Starbucks tried to take some initiative, and they decided that they're going to be having sippy cups, and they're going to be ditching plastic straws by the year 2020 or 2024. They have a different year that they're going to supposedly do this. And their new invention actually uses more plastic than they would have in regular straws. But the main point here, and of course I'm hearing that headline all over social media that this is stupid, that they're using more plastic. People need to also understand that the plastic and how they're shaping it and how they're using it would be a lot easier to recycle than it would a normal straw. But what we're seeing here ultimately is the government trying to fix a problem when it originally caused the problem. Because if it wasn't for hemp, if we were allowed to use hemp and there wasn't a big fix against hemp because it's so closely related to the marijuana plant, we could have biodegradable straws based off hemp, plastic, bioplastic, that would naturally disintegrate and everyone would be happy. And this problem, again, just like most problems in the world that most people are facing, was originated by the government, mainly making hemp illegal, mainly going after marijuana because of some back-end business deals with the Hirsch family all the way back a few decades ago that ultimately made hemp illegal. And now we have frickin' plastic straws everywhere, and we can't recycle them. And it's causing a big environmental impact, especially if you look at the Pacific Ocean and a lot of the oceans that are mainly affected and around Asia and Africa and India, where a lot of the pollution actually comes from. Those issues, and this one is so convoluted, but for me, Jason, the main issue here is the government caused this problem. The solution is hemp. They made sure we couldn't have hemp because of Hirsch and his manipulation of the government, and now their solution is to throw you in jail and to fine you for using it. And that, to me, is the absolute definition of madness. Jason.
Yeah, and for those that don't know why Hirsch went after hemp, it was because it was a competitor for paper, and he was in the newspaper business, and he didn't want any competitors because he already owned all these paper mills. So now with the decriminalization of marijuana becoming likely federally, as Trump has talked about it, as big states like New York are on the verge of doing it, perhaps that's the solution. But Luke, let's read one of these super chats. I know there's 3 of them. I'll let you get to the other 2, but this one is pertinent. James P., thank you very much. Nothing about feces or needles, but no straws. Exactly. We're worried about something that is so minute, so insane, and like you said, up to a year in prison, $1,000 fine for a straw, and then it doesn't matter if you have a plastic cup, Luke. It's made of the same material, Luke, and like you said, Starbucks is like, we're gonna get ahead of the game. We're gonna get ahead of the national straw ban, and we're gonna have adult baby cups for everybody. Sippy cups. They literally call them sippy cups. I'm a grown ass man. I don't want a sippy cup, Luke. All right.
Well, it makes sense, but how the government acts and thinks its population is, they're pretty much treating us like toddlers and kids, and they're the worst abusive parents that you could ever have. Mm-hmm. They literally just kick over the garbage, look at you, be like, you threw over the garbage, and they start beating you up for it. This is what's happening with this straw thing. And of course, everyone's memeing about the straws, and they will not take away the straws. And ultimately, I love the memes that are going out there.
Oh, I bet you do. I know you love those
incredible.
Memes.
Yeah, we should have filled in this show with just the memes that I'm seeing on there because I freaking love them. Again, they're making the problem a lot worse because what needs to happen is that hemp just needs to be more utilized and would be a more effective bioplastic that would not only help the environment but spur up a different industry that wasn't causing a lot of waste. And there is a crap ton of waste, and it does need to be dealt with appropriately. And I definitely don't see this as a good solution. Anything the government does, not a good solution in my own personal opinion.
Come on. See, that's where we and you will disagree. I think that the government does.
We'll talk about that. We can debate. We can debate about that later. Me and Jason have different opinions.
But let's read this super chat too, as it pertains to this story. Jesse Schmidt, thank you so much. You should do a video similar to Mark Dice's videos, getting San Francisco citizens to sign a petition to ban being poor. Anyone caught making less than the poverty line should be jailed. That would probably be a good place to do it, except for the fact that one of the quote-unquote memes I've seen this week, it's not really a meme, it's a bunch of people at a trendy little San Francisco coffee shop, eatery, eating outside, 5 feet away from a homeless man asleep on the street. And that's what happens when you have such a disparagement of the wealth gap. And that is a problem, Luke. I mean, that area in Northern California is insane to try to pay and live in. We're talking San Francisco here. And then also, in turn, has an insane amount of poverty, and then also makes insane laws like this one, banning the straw. They want to free the nipple, Luke. I want to free the plastic straw, friend.
Well, it's not only that. They have human feces everywhere. I think there was a report that there was over 12,000 separate reports of just human crap all over San Francisco. So, yes, the kind of distribution of wealth that you're talking about, the kind of inequality of wealth that you're talking about, again, Jason, I see it as a government problem since they incentivize and not only give tax breaks and grants and startup money to a lot of the mega corporations, including, I mean, the government's involvement in Google and Facebook, and still current participation with Amazon as well, is one of the reasons why they are dominating the market. And if it wasn't for government artificially putting these guys up because they play ball with them and they spy on American citizens and do all these other things, it would have never happened if we had a completely honest market. But no, we have communism, like the definition of communism, for the people that are interconnected with the government. And then we have regular capitalism, hardcore capitalism, for everyone else. And to me, that's the picture that is wrong. And to me, if the government stepped out the way, it would be a lot better. But we could talk about that later. Do you want me to get into super chats, or should we get into the next story that we want to talk about?
Let's just do the super chats that are pertinent to this, and we'll go back to that big one. Actually, we'll do the big one at the end. That way, we can jump to the next story. So, Avat says, "I'm going to move to California and become a straw bootlegger." Well, you get out there, Avats. You get out there. You take it to the man. You sell those straws. You bootleg those straws. And then Primus81 just kind of threw his cash.
Imagine, Jason, being in jail and like someone sitting next to you. What are you in for? Bubble tea straws? Like, what are the bubble tea people going to do? Like, how are you going to have the stupid tapioca and all the other dumb crap that people clog down their mouth holes in these Asian tea places without the big straws that people use so much?
And you know what? They looked into that. If you read these articles, Luke, one of the companies was like, well, we're going to go with this I forget what type of plastic was, but they found out that also was banned. Now, if they want to get metal straws or paper straws, they actually have those. They're also incurring a cost of 35 to 60% more per straw. Now, when a plastic straw costs about 3 cents, and you go through 2 million of them a year, think about that. You're going to end up paying an extra couple $100,000 for those straws, so you're going to have to start charging more. People don't see that.
Yeah, and where's the money going to? The money's going towards the state. And what is the money that the state uses? Ultimately, to screw people over and to push up their friends in the private sector. And no. Use hemp. Damn it. The private industry should be allowed to do what they want. If they had hemp, we wouldn't have any of these problems, especially with stupid plastic straws. And there would be a lot less waste. There's a lot of waste. There's an environmental issue. There are independent people who are doing like straws that you could carry with you that are magnetic, that you could actually fold out and pop out. That's a great business idea that people are getting into. But ultimately, just have hemp. People, it's that simple. Just use hemp. All right, what's the next super chat that we have here?
Yeah, last super chat right here. Last super chat that we've taken care of all the ones involved in the story. Luke, we have a NextRad radar creating a huge drought with the deadly fires that are killing people from geoengineering in California. That's from Sterling Michaels. So I think that Sterling Michaels is making the insinuation that the current major wildfires that are out in California are some sort of geoengineering program. I haven't seen any evidence of that. However, we know that geoengineering does exist. I did a full motion picture called Shade the Motion Picture back in 2012 with Shepard Ambellis talking about these droughts, talking about geoengineering, talking about solar radiation management, and many of the things that our government openly does to engineer the weather, Luke. So although I have not seen evidence of this wildfire being that, I would not put it past the government to do geoengineering in a place like California, where Rosalind Peterson is, by the way, in Northern California, where she's done a ton of research. But again, you want to see that stuff, please check out my film, Shade the Motion Picture, for free on YouTube.
All right, let's go into more news that confirms my confirmation bias and shows you how government is wrong. And that is the talk about government shutting down, as Donald Trump this week threatened to shut down the government unless the Democrats agreed to fund the Mexican wall. And, of course, other immigration reforms that Donald Trump is pushing. And he is threatening because the government is going to run out of money, because that's what government is. It's horrible at business, and they're in a huge deficit, and they need to approve another spending bill. Donald Trump is saying, I won't approve the spending bill unless my wall is in there. And I know, again, Jason, we disagree. You like the wall. I do not like the wall. But when it comes to this specific topic, to me, the wall is a very unpractical, counterintuitive, mainly symbolic gesture that doesn't really change anything, but shutting down the government. I mean, now we're talking here. Now let's get behind this. Let's shut that bad boy down. It doesn't need to be there. I'm not a fan of government. Government is just another way of saying mafia. Mafia and gangs. I'm no gangs. No gangs, no mafia. We can handle this. I believe in human society. That's my take on it, Jason.
All right, so here is my take on this, Luke. Yes, me and you disagree about this wall. Now, I will agree with you that it's not going to do much in the way of government drug running, since our CIA is largely responsible for the majority of the drugs that come up through South America, either proactively or kind of in the background by funding and working with the cartels. This is mainstream knowledge. We see it again and again. Every once in a while, a C-130 goes down with 500 tons of cocaine. It's connected to the Central Intelligence Agency. I get it. I get where you're coming from. I'm not looking for a big, bad, scary wall, okay? I don't want something that looks like Palestine and Israel, for example, because I know that that's what a lot of people point to, and I understand why, keeping people in. I want something that looks more like a mall throughway stop, where there's centers, and yeah, there's military there also, but basically, it's almost like, hey, I got easy pass, I can get in and out most of the time. I think that's a practical way to look at it. Now, on the flip side of that, Luke, there's the no. But on the flip side of that, remember, our president promised us that their president and Mexico were paying for the wall, Luke. They're paying for the wall. Not happening. So, here we go. Now he's threatening to shut down the government. Personally, I think it's super hype. As you know, under the Obama administration, I think twice during that administration the government shut down, which basically meant some things shut down. The entire government doesn't shut down, folks. That's not how it works. Everything vital is still running. Some tours at Yosemite Park may not be running. Things like that get shut down. And the problem there is people who are in these federal and state jobs start losing money. That's a big issue. And that's not a pro-government issue. I'm just saying
then they should get an honest job.
Okay, so again, Luke, at a national park, that's not an honest job. If you're working there and you're giving nice people tours of nature, I know you like nature. See, this is where we're going to disagree.
I can find my own tours. I don't need some butt munch sniffing around being like, oh, you're having an alcoholic beverage here. Let me give you a summons and fine for having some wine in our national park. Oh, you're smoking a cigarette. Oh, my goodness, how dare you? Like, no, I don't need you. I can see the park. I know what it is. You're not giving me a tour of it. You're policing me, and you're trying to fine me over some stipulations that don't affect anybody and don't violate the non-aggression principle. Sorry, continue. So I cut you off.
I can tell you're not around children all the time, because that's not... The kids get excited. Like, when I was a kid, for instance, I went on a couple of these mountain climbs at these things. There's 30 kids and 5 adults with you. It's good to have somebody telling you what's going on. Listen, again,
Hobo Bob will tell you what's going on better than these government agents who are reliant on the teeth of the taxpayer, and I'm sick and tired of just being extorted.
Oh, you play to those anarchists, brother. I'll also say this. If we really wanted to save money, and, Trump didn't want to throw a temper tantrum, Democrats won't give me the money. Hey, let's pull out about 16,000 of those troops off the South Korean border. I know that it's not a story we covered here, but I did a report on how North Korea is making good on their promises, Luke. They are dismantling their nuclear facilities. They have returned the remains of veterans from the Korean War. Let's show a little love. We've stopped them. Let's bring some troops back. That'll save us some cash. And we could start there, and we can do Afghanistan. And then we can do Syria, because they're still battling in Syria, and they're smuggling ISIS out by the day. So you know what, man? There's enough money.
And you say my idea is a pipe dream. You say I'm dreaming here with my...
You see, but here's the difference. Mine, if there was somebody reasonable in government, would actually work, and we get to keep the government.
Someone reasonable in government is an oxymoron. If I can... My argument against the wall, which I think is just idiotic and stupid, one, because it's going to violate a lot of Americans' eminent domain, a lot of private property, It costs way too much money. We're already indebted $22 trillion. Yeah, whatever. What's another couple billion there? It's just stupid. They're going to use it from the taxpayers. And most immigration, most part of immigration comes from people flying in. That wall, Jason, hypothetically, it's not going to be used to keep people out from coming in. It's going to be used against us from leaving the damn place where you can't have a plastic straw and you go to jail for misgendering somebody or saying a few words that maybe offended somebody. That's what it's going to be used for. It's going to be used to lock us in, and then we won't be able to get out. My own personal theory and speculation.
Well, I like how you threw in the gender language there, because obviously that's something I greatly oppose. I don't think that the government should be enforcing anything against language or telling us that this is hate speech or that is hate speech.
They shouldn't be enforcing anything.
I don't know, dude. I am so not an anarchist. I'm a minimalist. I'm a constitutionalist. I just got to go with that. And again, I think that this is a lot of hype. We both know that this is a lot of hype. The world's not going to end if the government goes down. It'll be a bunch of Democrats grandstanding that Trump has done such a terrible thing to this country, shutting down the government. The poor people of blah, blah, blah in Kentucky and blah. It'll be nonsense. I get it. But at the end of the day, Luke, I don't want Road Warrior. You show me an actual society that has sustained itself independently with no government, with anarchy, with the non-aggression principle, and I'll show you my butthole.
No! You dirty, hairy man. No! Stop it. This is a PG-13 show. 1, Burning Man. 2, there's a whole community in Guerrero, Mexico, that just overthrew and took out their entire police force and government because the government was, again, working with the other mafia. Mafias work together. And also selling off their natural resources to private companies, destroying their environment and the environment that the people were living in. And the people said, screw it, we're kicking you out. And that's a story that we're going to be working on and developing. I think I'm going to travel down there soon to Guerrero, Mexico, to cover that very specific story. But just about this shutdown that everyone was talking about this past week as well. Trump threatened to do this already 2 times before. We will see exactly what happens. He's going to play the political landscape. He's using this as a threat. But of course, if the government does shut down, the war machine is exempt from that. The Pentagon is exempt for that. They will still get that blood money to commit a lot of the crimes that they do commit all over the world. And sadly, a lot of the peasant government parasites will be affected by it. The little guys, the people who are doing the little stuff for the government, and also people who receive benefits from the military will be affected by it. So, of course, they already have certain things. Not a good idea to just hurt the little person. Not a good idea. If you're going to shut the government down, shut it down completely. All right, we got some super chats. I'm losing track of these.
All right, I got them. I got them. So there's a few interview requests here. We've got interview with Curtis Stone. I'm not familiar with who Curtis Stone is. Perhaps Luke is. Michael Zarian. He's somebody I haven't heard of in years. I'm not sure exactly what he's doing. But I'd be open to interviewing Michael Zarian. I disagree with a lot of his stuff. I've watched a lot of his lectures. I think it gets a little too deep into Atlantis and all these other things. Interview with Mike Paseo. I'm not sure who he is.
Mike Paseo. Okay, yeah. I actually interviewed Mike Paseo. Interesting guy. If you just look up WeAreChange Mark Paseo, you can see the interview that I did with him. He was also a speaker at Anarchapulco just a few months ago as well. Peter Joseph of Zeitgeist. This is what Nicholas Peter is asking to interview Peter Joseph. We had a very interesting kind of back and forth. He kind of didn't like me a few years ago. We, of course, have very different points of view. He believes in kind of centralized, technocratic, communistic system. And obviously, I believe in the complete freaking opposite of that.
See, I'm somewhere in the middle.
As far as you can. But, again, what's different is that I was actually able to be with him a few months ago in Texas at a conference, and we exchanged and we just had some small talk, exchanged some beers. But we also talked about Jason having him on. I sent you his contact. Let's try to interview him, have a debate. I would love to debate and talk to him. He's doing other smaller scale stuff. He's affected by some family stuff as well, so he's not as active. But I think it'll be interesting to talk to Peter Joseph.
And I interviewed Peter, it's got to be 11 years ago now. Me and Dylan did, back when we did Louder Than Words Radio. And that was when, you know, Loose Change was a big part of Zeitgeist 1. I remember when I was working for InfoWars and Zeitgeist 2 was put out, that's really where he went towards this central government kind of thing, outside of even what Jacques, what was Jacques' last name? You know what I'm talking
Fiasco
about.
or something?
Yeah, Fresco. Jacques Fresco.
Yeah.
Went beyond that, and then just Peter Joseph didn't really want to talk to me anymore. He made some comments, and you know, I'm a buffoon and an idiot, and I just have a different perspective than both Luke, who I don't think is an idiot, and Peter, who I know is not an idiot. He's a very smart guy. So Nicholas Peter, thank you for the super chats, and we'll see what we can do for you. Jesse Schmidt, he says,
this was my favorite. I like this one. I like this one, Jason. I'm going to take this one.
Yeah, I bet you're going to love. We're going to roll with it.
I really appreciate this one. It goes along with a lot of very important things that I was talking about here. And Jesse Schmidt asks, shows a government. I think she's trying to say, show me a government that doesn't suck first. Go ahead, Jason. Show me a government that doesn't suck.
Well, you know, I'll say this, Luke. There are plenty of localized governments that are not the worst, especially in this country. Now, that's why we have checks and balances, and that's why we have a judicial system that is supposed to take care of the corrupt. It doesn't always happen. I live in New York. Andrew Cuomo, very corrupt man, probably going to run for president. Not saying he's going to win, but he's going to be pushed by the establishment. He's done some bad things here. But in the little old town of Oneonta, New York, where I live, I know the police chief. You know, I know the mayor. I've had conversations with both of them. I think because we have a constitutional republic and our government is decentralized, there are plenty of local governments, Jesse, that I can point to that are much better than just good. They're great. They're great, but nothing. No, you show me one thing that's free of corruption. One thing that's pure in this world, Luke. It doesn't exist, man. We're not in fairy tale land, okay? So we have to take things as they are. I'll tell you this. It's better than totalitarian governments. Obviously, it's better than the Chinese system, where there's a social credit score in place for millions upon millions of citizens. So again, our government is far from perfect. I think we live in a national security state. I think we live in a police state in many regions. Where you live, Luke, in New York City, New York State overall has more police than almost anywhere else in the country. Drive to Pennsylvania, drive to Maine, you know, drive to Virginia. Nowhere near the cops you'll see just on a highway drive in New York. That's state. You get into the city, you can't look past 10, 15 people without seeing a cop. There's cops everywhere. So I get it. I understand the point. But again, you show me the anarchist society that is thriving.
Cops when you don't need them. You put up a protest sign in New York City, they'll be on you like white on rice. Something happens. It's hard to find them. When you need them. No. Whatever. Drunk driver hit my car. Had to chase him down. Stopped him.
All right. I'm not sure if Luke just froze up there. Hopefully he will be back in a second. But with that, Luke, if you hear me right now, I'm not sure if you want to disconnect, come back in, because you are completely frozen. But I want to get back to this next story, and hopefully Radowski will be joining me in a moment. Trump is trying to strip Obama's intelligence chiefs of their security clearance in revenge for making baseless accusations, including treason against him. And folks, I'm actually all for this, okay? And I know there's going to be some people that'll be a backlash. Oh, that's treasonous. How can he do it? This is unprecedented. That's the mainstream media line, okay? That's what they're saying. So you should really be questioning them at this point, okay? The real truth of the matter is that, folks, these guys are committing treason against the President of the United States. The deep state is real. When people like Clapper and Brennan get up there and they say that Trump is committing treason against the country for talking to Vladimir Putin, for having discussions with Kim Jong-un, it's a huge, huge problem. Now, a caveat to this, Rand Paul actually requested that this happened. Here we go. We got Luke hopefully coming right back in. Oh, and there we are.
Everything's working on my end. It never stopped working. Can you hear me?
You just froze. You just totally froze. I mean, if you go to the video feed, you'll see it, but you just froze right up. I'm not sure if you heard me while I was doing all that stuff, but I looped into the next story. So we're
okay. We're still live.
Yeah, we're live. Oh, we never stopped.
Okay.
So right now we're talking, Luke, that Trump is trying to strip Brennan, Clapper, other Obama intelligence chiefs of their security clearance. And guess what? I agree. And Rand Paul is the one that proposed this. These guys, again, Luke, I just told the audience this, but they are on television saying that the president is treasonous for meeting with Vladimir Putin, for talking to Kim Jong-un, to working towards peaceful resolutions. And we know from the IG report that these guys aren't his friend. So I actually agree with this move, Luke. I'm not sure what you think.
I hate to say this. I agree.
There we go. Oh, was it that hard? Was it so tough? Oh, you're going to give the guy a little something? Donald Trump's a little bit better than John Brennan and the Clapper monster? People like Michael Hayden? Yeah, Michael Hayden, guys, is a demon, okay? He's a demon. And you Luke, I didn't want to talk about this. We didn't have it scheduled.
There's a great video that and a conversation that I had with Mr. Michael Hayden. I definitely recommend people watch it. It's on our YouTube channel. Just put in WeAreChange Michael Hayden. He was not happy to see me. We had a very aggressive conversation, but I agree with Donald Trump on this issue for a number of reasons. But again, I agree with him, but I think he needs to go a little bit further because security clearances need to be revoked when people are no longer a part of the administration. There's no reason why they should continue to have a security clearance. And they use that security clearance and that access in order to sell it to private corporations and the military-industrial complex, organizations that are all connected and, of course, corrupt. Why should private companies be connected to privy information that's not available to anyone unless they're connected with the government? Don't just take away the clearance for Obama intelligence chiefs. Take away the clearance from Bush's intelligence chiefs, Bill Clinton's intelligence chiefs, because they're ultimately taking that information and getting cozy private sector jobs where they use that clearance in order for corporations to get the jump and to know what's happening in advance of the rest of us. So clearly, 100% agree, take away all of those security clearances for all former employees unless they're currently active right now. It makes sense because it violates the basic rules of an open free market capitalistic system when there's these buttholes who worked in government, coming out of government, having private information that's not available to the public, using it for the benefit of these private corporations that are ultimately just using communistic ways to get a profit. So 100% against that in so many different ways.
Yeah, I'm with you 1,000%. For people that don't understand that, they take this information that they get to find out beyond what we know as a public because they have a top secret or beyond clearance. And then they also go to private intelligence firms such as Stratfor, such as Fusion GPS, Kissinger Institute, what was Cambridge Analytica. There's plenty of these things out there that we don't even know about, Luke, okay? And they should have none of that access. It's crazy to me. I think that's what that is what the national security state is to me, Luke. That's where we go beyond the constitutional government that I just defended, the constitutional republic, and we get into basically this is what a technocrat is. It's beyond the bureaucrat. It's somebody who has an advantage over everybody else because of the information that they have, and then they're treated differently, not only by the private sector, but by the government themselves when they leak this information. So it's crazy to me.
Jason, it's crony capitalism because of government that the private sector is abusing, and it's not the private sector's fault. It's the government's fault. But moving on, what we're seeing here with Trump calling for this, and Rand Paul. There's a very strange love affair with Rand Paul and Donald Trump, which is very fascinating to see unfold as it's kind of building. And it should be interesting how that relationship is going to play out. But again, what we're seeing here is the left establishment versus the right establishment. I would love to see Donald Trump take away the security clearance of the Bush officials. Will he? Most likely not. He's making an attempt on this one. But again, the two sides are just fighting each other. It's a whole divide and conquer scheme. And to me, you know, people use the previous article we talked about that Donald Trump is going up against these guys. Well, he's also pushing for a lot of other sinister things that the supposed deep state has been wanting for a while, like we saw this week, where on July 23rd, what was that? That was Monday of this week, he sent a very angry message on Twitter to Iran saying, quote, to Iranian President Rouhani, never ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious. Now, this story is a little bit more complex, which we're going to unfold here. But Donald Trump said this because the Iranian President Rouhani said that he told Iranian diplomats that America should know that peace with Iran is the mother of all peace, and war with Iran is the mother of all wars. Do not play with the lion's tail, or else you will regret it. And this is a direct comment by the Iranian president that Donald Trump responded to. And we also heard this week from Australian officials and Australian media companies that have sources within the government of Australia that said that Donald Trump could be ready to order a strike against Iran very shortly. And this is a story confirmed by many different news agencies all throughout Australia. And we're hearing that General Mathis, Donald Trump's part of Donald Trump's administration, the defense secretary, is saying, no, we're not really seeking regime change in Iran, when, yes, they are seeking regime change in Iran, and the warmongering deep state establishment has been pushing for a conflict with that country ever since 9/11, Jason, and it looks like they're being very aggressive with it, and I know that there's spin, and I'm hearing a lot of Trump supporters say that he is using this tough talk as part of the art of the deal, that he's doing the same thing that he did with North Korea, where he insulted Kim Jong-un, called him like a fat boy or something. People were mad that Trump was trying to cause a nuclear war with North Korea, and then he was able to use that as leverage to get them to the negotiation tables. But the Iran situation, with that hypothesis, I kind of disagree, because already, North Korea, the deal that they have now with the United States was a similar deal that Iran had. Donald Trump got rid of that deal. Israel was openly bragging how they got him to do it. And really, ultimately, when it comes to the bigger conflict with Iran, it's predominantly done for the benefit of the state of Israel, which people don't talk about. But where are you, Jason? What do you think? Do you think this is the art of the deal, tough talk, leverage, threat to Iran in order to get a better deal for the war machine and for peace? Or is this just him pushing the old kind of establishment goal, the wet dream of people like John Bolton, who he set himself aside to bomb the crap and obliterate millions of people?
I think it's really towards the latter, unfortunately, Luke. The truth of the matter is this, okay? You have an administration under Trump with Mattis, even though he's denying this. Remember, this came out of Australia, made some big waves. Mattis actually had to come and address it and say the U.S. is not planning a missile strike against Iran. I think that when you're talking about North Korea and you're talking about Iran, or Iran, however you pronounce it, I know I'm terrible, I'm American. You're talking about two completely different things. Why? Well, just because of the Israeli factor alone. We know that we had Netanyahu, as we reported on last week, bragging that he's the one that got Trump to get rid of the Iran nuclear deal that we had in place over the Obama administration. Was it perfect? No. Was it a step in the right direction? You bet your ass it was. Anything diplomatic is a step in the right direction. It's just like, I did a video this week on the North Korean situation where the media just attacked Trump for talking to him, told everybody he's not going to. I've got Governor Bill Richardson, who's been back and forth to North Korea, saying there's no way they're going to give up their nuclear weapons. This is all nonsense. He gained nothing. What did they do? They started dismantling more bases this week. Here's the issue. We got 80 million people in Iran. The leader is not wrong when saying it will be the mother of all wars. Syria is a conflict we could not win, that we are getting out of as we speak. Luke, there are 20 million people there. I'm scared that there would be a missile attack in Iran because I think that that's something that could hit home. That could bring something legitimate here to the United States, an attack here. Not to mention all the innocent people that would be slaughtered. I know there's a lot of people in imagination land that don't think that brown people in Iran or any other Middle Eastern nation matter, but they're human beings just like us, Luke. So I don't like this tough talk. I don't think it's getting us anywhere. I think it's very, very dangerous that we have people like Mattis and John Bolton in the ear of President Trump. And, we're pretty much in 100% agreement on this one.
Well, finally. And as we know, Donald Trump hasn't been afraid to send those missiles like he did towards Syrian government forces and Syrian military facilities, which ultimately were the ones who were fighting the radical Islamic terrorists that were spreading terrorism all over the Western world. So yeah, this is a again, you won't hear this talk anywhere, especially on the mainstream media. Mainstream media only highlights voices who are pro-war since they're contracting and making money off war. Obviously, this is why they're talking about Stormy Daniels and not Yemen. This is why they're distracting people, and they're just trying to keep us confused to what's really going on here about this left-right paradigm and not really seeing things for what they are. Government is bad. Government is mafia. And it leads to problems like this. Jason, you disagree on that, but that's a whole different
listen, there are parts of government that are very
violence
disturbing.
Is wrong. And just very simply, extortion and violence is wrong. You should never hurt somebody and extort them just because of their thoughts and opinions and words. And you should, just follow the non-aggression principle. But that's just me. You disagree. We got 2 more super chats, and then Jason, get into the next story. Yep. The next story is Tuesday, or which one is it?
Yes, the next one is Tuesday.
Next story is for Tuesday, but yeah.
Yeah, let's do these guys quick. And Nicholas Peter, again, another great super chat. Thank you so much, man. Check out my video, A Message to All Kids in Public Schools. Would love to hear your opinion on it, guys. Thanks in advance. I'll try to check that out later this evening, my man. And then Artie Martello.
Right now.
All right, that a boy, Luke. Artie Martello, the political parties have largely corrupted the government. How can 2 organizations represent the interests of a diverse group of 300 million people? The answer is they can't. And that's why I'm not a Democrat.
Thank you, Artie.
Yeah.
I like that super chat, Artie. I appreciate it very much.
Listen,
sorry,
again,
Jason.
No. Listen, you guys will have your fun. It's not like I'm sitting here trying to wave a Republican or Democratic flag, say I'm a liberal or a conservative. I've got a donkey or an elephant behind me. I'm a 3rd, 4th, 5th party guy. I think there is room for more parties. Obviously, I guess I'd lead more libertarian.
You mean more government?
That would not be more government. That would be independent organizations that put people into government, and that's not a bad thing.
Mafias?
Oh boy, like mafias have never put their people in government. They do it all over the world, including this one, and we both know it. Assemblymen
is mafia, Jason.
Oh boy.
By the basic definition and rules.
Boy.
The mafia comes around with their big guys, aka the police. They go to a business owner, and they're like, "We'll protect you. Pay up every single month." What does the government do? Pay up every single year. That's called extortion. I never volunteered for that, but that's a whole nother. Let's have a whole debate about this later on. Let's get to Tuesday's story.
Yeah, and the big story Tuesday.
We're almost at an hour.
Yeah, big story Tuesday, which was kind of a Monday story too, Luke, but ended up being even bigger on Tuesday, is the fact that Facebook shareholders try to fire Zuckerberg after he mishandled recent privacy and election meddling scandals, which in turn, Luke, was the biggest drop in stock history on Wall Street. To let people know how much money Facebook lost, they lost more than the entire valuation of McDonald's. Okay? So think about that. Okay? They lost about half of their stock's worth, Luke, but that stock that they lost is like McDonald's was wiped off the market. That's incredible.
That would be good. I like that idea. That sounds like a very wonderful idea. Fire Mark Zuckerberg and his secret society and all the jacket emblems that he has, that he wears everywhere. That jacket is probably stinky as hell. And most importantly, it's also important to note here that Mark Zuckerberg was selling a bunch of his stocks in Facebook just months ago. So he probably knew the insider scoop of what's going on here. I definitely don't see him taking any hit for that or any insider trading rules and violations, which he most likely committed, since he definitely made a very good economic move before this tumble of Facebook. But hell, let's bring down Facebook as much as we can. Again, Facebook wouldn't be as prominent and powerful if it wasn't for, guess what, Jason? Government. And it's true. It's true. It's true. You look at the basic startup of Facebook and their involvement with the government right now, they wouldn't be as powerful if it wasn't for them.
Well, you know
Wednesday's story.
Let's talk about some of the other things that are affecting this. First of all, there's censorship. People know about it. Again, I'm not in love with everything InfoWars does, but I think the platform should exist. I don't agree with everything that Alex Jones says, but I don't disagree with everything that Alex Jones says. And them kicking him off the platform for 30 days, I think, is a bad move. Them talking about Fox News as not being able to be on their watch program is a bad move. And that's not, I'm not here to defend Fox News, by the way. Listen, a lot of their stuff is propaganda, but there's some voices in the wilderness. You know, Tucker Carlson has done some great things this year on plastic straws, confronting some of the councilmen like, you're kidding me. You could get the same amount of time in prison for using a plastic straw as you could for exposing somebody to HIV knowingly. That makes sense to you. And I'm glad those voices are out there. Now, did Jones go overboard when he said that, I believe I watched it, that Robert Mueller was a pedophile that was able to rape people in front of others? I don't know that to be a fact. Robert Mueller, not a good person. However, here I am defending Jones when the media started saying that he threatened to shoot Robert Mueller. No, I watched it. He clearly said he was going to be in a political duel. We're getting in a political duel, and let me tell you, when I'm ready to fire that trigger. And then he started making the gun motions. We're not going to do it here. We're not going to do it here. God forbid. And YouTube takes us off. He got suspended from his YouTube channel too. Can't live stream right now. I think that's a bad move. I don't think there's real hate speech there. He wasn't calling for somebody's death. He wasn't saying he was going to hurt somebody. It was a performance piece from our favorite actor, Alex Jones. But at the same time, Facebook...
Your favorite, not mine.
What? I said our favorite. I didn't say mine.
No, Jason.
I was
just.
It was a little. Yeah. I wasn't saying he's my favorite. Okay, let's get that out of the way. He's not my favorite, but you know, he said some things about me the past year that weren't true, and it kind of irked me that, you know, I've never attacked the guy. In fact, I'm pro free speech. I like his platform. I'm glad it's there. Okay, it's better than most. Is it great? No! You've got to be able to call out Trump. You can't have his right-hand man, Roger Stone, on all the time with impunity. The man who is behind modern-day lobbying, Luke. He's literally the guy that helped create it with people like Manafort. And that's why, listen, should Manafort be in jail right now? Probably for something. For Russian collusion, no. I mean, that's not why he's there. But people like Manafort should be in jail because they're freaking criminals, bro. They are. And that's the big conundrum, and nobody can admit that. So, you know, that's how I'm looking at this whole Facebook situation. They got a lot on their plate. They know that they're massively data collecting, Luke. They know that they're trying to suppress speech. It's a tough run. I hope there's a better social media platform that comes out of this. But right now, you know, the venues to get your things watched and your information seen really are YouTube and Facebook, right?
Yeah, well, I'll be honest. I don't like the man. I don't like Alex Jones at all. Personal differences, private differences. There's a lot of different stuff there that we're not going to get into. But what's happening here is a very dangerous, slippery slope. And I think, on one hand, he's also playing into it by being so sensational and hyperbolic and so discrediting that it does hurt all the other people who are also in independent media. And at the same time, what Facebook is doing is utterly ridiculous. You can't just be the orienter of truth. You can't decide what people can and cannot hear. It's extremely Orwellian, extremely scary, extremely daunting, and every person, no matter if they're right or wrong, should have an opinion to voice it, and people should have the right to be able to listen to different things, and especially different opinions. Me and you, Jason, we disagree on a lot of different issues. I still respect you as a human being. We have debates, and I find those debates entertaining. I never try to censor you or tell you, no, man, how dare, like other people who are telling you, this is the program, this is the message you're going to push. That's never going to happen here. The discourse and communication needs to happen. It's the only way for humanity to progress and to learn and to develop and to grow is to be open with our communication and to ideas that we haven't heard before in a rational way without freaking out with freaking click tits that are meant to get us away from that point. So click tits are a problem. Censorship, a bigger problem. So I'm agreeing with you with a lot of the things you said.
Yeah, and again, that doesn't excuse the sensationalism. We try not to be sensationalist here. And this is not me, saying that I like to be lied to, but let's be quite honest, Luke. The mainstream media lies to us every single day. That's why we have 455 stories by Stormy Daniels on MSNBC alone in a year. Just to put that into perspective, folks, that's almost 10 a week. That's over 9 a week. Individual segment stories on one network. How much can you talk about a stripper in a different manner that did the same thing? She banged a guy, took some money for it, and then ran her mouth. That deserves 10 stories a week? Give me a break. And Yemen gets none. So yes, that's a big problem. So I take every media outlet with a grain of salt, and I try to get as close as I can to source information by watching the actual press conference, by reading the actual government document, by reading the indictments of Allison Mack, Keith Raniere, and now Claire Bronfman. That's how I get by. I read the source material.
It's really just about people being responsible news consumers and making sure that we don't depend on someone else to do the hard work for us. And, we need to do the hard work. We need to be better news consumers, and we need to not incentivize click tits, not incentivize Stormy Daniels, not incentivize someone making something up about someone being a pedo when there's no actual evidence providing any of it. Sure, you could have your personal opinions, but when you're spreading lies as truth, you're doing a lot of damage. But the damage would never happen if we just were better news consumers. And it really just begins with countering your narrative. And that's what we've been doing here. That's why we disagree. And that's why I always bring up things that really infuriates people on the left and people on the right. And that's okay. We need to be able to hear opinions without getting mad. That to me is the moral of the story. Screw Facebook. I hope they go down as a private business. What they're doing, censoring people, is absolutely horrible, and they should have no support at all. Screw that horrible Fed book.
And
all right.
Speaking of big platforms like Facebook and YouTube, one of the big things that they did censor in the past year was coverage of Las Vegas, and through lawsuits to the FBI from the Associated Press, the Las Vegas Journal, and others, we're actually getting the videos, Luke. We have another 8 hours of footage released. I believe it was this past Wednesday, and I've watched some of it. It's pretty incredible. What I've been looking for, and I haven't been able to find, is any of the footage inside the Tropicana or outside the Bellagio Hotel that evening. If anybody has seen that stuff, please DM me, find me on Twitter, find me on Facebook. I'd really love to see it, but I'm super happy that this has happened because it shows that the FBI is not above the law and that the people should have this information, Luke. And again, the more source material we have, the better we are able to have discernment and decide for ourselves what actually happened there. And obviously, there are some sketchy things, and we have not been told the truth about the Vegas situation.
Yeah, a small piece of information and evidence that people had to claw out of the jaws of the Federal Bureau of Investigations and get a little bit of something. But it's very small compared to just the huge amount of details and information that is still being kept away from the people about the horrible situation that happened in Las Vegas. It's very telling that the mainstream media is not running with the story. It's very telling what happened in so many different circumstances surrounding these events. And it's really an issue that needs to be focused on more. That's really important to do our homework on and question the authority that's very hesitant on telling us what the hell really happened.
Yeah, and one of the main takeaways just from the Associated Press, this is a pretty short article, but the headline, I really want to read it for people. Video, police assumed many shooters in Las Vegas massacre. And, there are a couple videos I have come across where they are talking about people on the ground in black outfits, and these are police officers. Now, again, they're also talking about people in custody, one dead, one in custody. There's a lot to be gone over. But that's why citizen journalists are important. You know who's not combing over these videos? Let me tell you. The LA Times ain't combing over these videos. MSNBC ain't combing over these videos. CBS ain't combing over these videos. You know who is? Joe Robinson down the street. He's checking them out. So that's why source material and citizen journalism is so important and why this story is important. But let's move on to the next one, Luke, because this one, it's wrapping up right now. Justice Kennedy gets lukewarm reception at the Bohemian Grove Club conservatives. Now remember, this is the 2-week encampment where a bunch of Republicans often dress up in Druidic outfits. No big deal there, right? That's pretty cool. Worship a large owl god, do the cremation of care, and this year on the list, Luke, you're going to enjoy this. Guess who a big speaker was? And he really made a great impression on all those conservatives. Our good friend at MSNBC, Chris Matthews. Oh, Mr. Matthews was at the Bohemian Grove Club this summer and getting that warm reception. And it should be noted that Kennedy is the justice that is about to leave and be replaced by Kavanaugh if he gets voted in. So this is a power center for the political and business elite, especially the ones that lean conservative, Luke. And guess what? There's been almost no mainstream media coverage whatsoever. This one is really local coverage as it's outside of the San Francisco Chronicle, which is very, very close to where the Grove is. It's in Sonoma, California, in the Redwood Forest. What's your take on this year's Bohemian Grove event?
Yeah, there's been absolutely very to little no coverage at all, but it is very significant. Very powerful people go there. Presidents, former presidents, presidential advisors, Henry Kissinger, Dick Cheney, Conan O'Brien, celebrities, and people in all spheres of influence go there. And Bill Clinton told WeAreChange Ohio that this is where high, powerful Republicans go to run around naked in the woods together. He said that. And then, of course, they replayed that footage on national television. But as we know, there are a lot of weird, creepy stuff happens there. There's a lot of symbolic, satanic symbology there. There's been reports of male prostitutes being shipped in. There's been just the most awful, crazy things that you're hearing about the place. And it's issues that I have brought to many of their members. I talked to people like Newt Gingrich about 10 times now. If you get an opportunity, check out WeAreChange Newt Gingrich, and you could see him sitting with his wife. There's an elephant next to him at a book signing. There was no one at his book signing but me and a lot of security guards. And I was like, so let's talk about the male prostitutes that were shipped in at the Bohemian Grove and what you do there.
Chad Savage.
So it makes, it's not a surprise that a lot of media types like Chris Matthews, David Gergen, and David Brooks were there. What they were talking about is fascinating, though, because there's a lot of double entendres. There's a lot of weird kind of symbology. But according to the San Francisco Chronicle, Chris Matthews and David Gergen and David Brooks lit up the crowd, especially when Brooks laminated the loss of honesty, truth, and civility during the Trump era, calling it a, quote, disaster and threat to democracy. And my response to that, you could just see absolutely how delusional, brainwashed, and insane these human beings are if they actually believe it. They probably got a huge applause because everyone was like, wow, these guys are like the most hypocritical people that we could ever find. Chris Matthews, MSNBC fires anyone who questions the narrative that they're trying to force feed down your throat. Philip Donahue, Ed Schultz, Jesse Ventura, all canned, censored for even going against the Democratic neoliberal establishment party line crap that they're trying to shove down your throat. So I think they were a big hit there, mainly because of just how entertaining it is for people to see the hypocrisy that these butt munches are spewing. So yeah, that's my personal take on it. And yeah, I gotta get there to Bohemian Grove one day and to cover it in person. I know me and Mark Dice have been talking about doing that a few years ago, but I don't know, maybe next year, Jason.
Yeah, no, that would be a good one. And, this is one of the problems I have with InfoWars. I didn't see them cover this at all. And, I saw in the chat, Joe Public, well, who broke Bohemian Grove? Well, yeah, no, Jones got in there for sure with John Ronson. And although John Ronson's work, sometimes I'm not in agreement with, I think he does some great stuff too. My point is, it used to be, this is a 2-week event, okay? He's not covering it anymore. Doesn't cover a lot of important issues. And again, when you have Chris Matthews, Kennedy, guys like David Gergen, he's in martial law, 2004, 9/11, rise of the police state. Jones confronted him at one time. I think the big problem is that there aren't organizations outside of WeAreChange, maybe Mark Dice, the Corbett Report, that are talking about the Bohemian Grove anymore, that are talking about the Bilderberg Group anymore. And remember, the Bohemian Grove, I think, very purposely takes place after the Bilderberg Group. And, this is an organization that's been around since the late 1800s, but the Bilderberg Group is about 125 people. You'll see about 20 to 25 of those people at this encampment of 3,000. If you don't think that they're discussing some of the things they discussed at Bilderberg, I think you're being very naive. And this is how compartmentalization works. A smaller group tells a larger group what to do and doesn't inform them of everything. Okay, that's how it works. It's just like, hey, when you're the press secretary of the United States, you're in a room with the president and his officials and you get down to what you can talk about. Then you talk about it to 25 people in a room. Then those 25 people in a room talk about it to the rest of the world. Okay, that's how, and they disseminate the information. That's why source material is so important, and that's why it's so important to still talk about the Bohemian Grove, the Bilderberg Group, Council on Foreign Relations, and other large spheres of influence, Mr. Radowski.
And secretive organizations that exist because of government. Sorry, Jason. There's going to be a continual trend here. We got 2 more stories. Let's run through them. Yep. Let's forget the last one, but let's run through these last 2 stories that you're talking about.
All right. Well, you want to take this one? Let's take this one super chat since we just talked about Vegas. Those that question the mainstream talking points on 9/11, the Vegas shooting, etc., are dubbed conspiracy theorists in a negative light. But what about those people that buy into the Trump-Russia conspiracy? That's by Artie Martello. And I think that we make that point all the time, is that once the mainstream media gets behind a conspiracy as ridiculous as Russiagate, well, then you have all the parrots. They're all parroting the same thing. It's a big parrot. Russia! Trump! You question 9/11. Yep. And then the media tells you, conspiracy theorist, crazy person, conspiracy, no, building 7, wrong, bad person, Nazi, denier. 9/11 denier was one of the things they tried to call us, as if we acted like 9/11 didn't exist. It's a media trick. Luke?
Yeah, Artie Martello, thank you so much for the super chat. And this goes in line with what we were just talking about being a better news consumer, about, if we're going to criticize them for believing the Trump-Russia conspiracy based on no evidence, we here on the alternative side can't also believe things without evidence. It's good to have different theories, but people don't treat them like theories. Whenever I have an opinion or something that I personally may feel to be true without any actual evidence, I try to make that clear. I think people need to make those distinctions, and sadly people don't, because they're incentivized by making these grand motions that have people click on them that don't work. So again, question every single thing, but always look for evidence to highlight your argument. Trump-Russia thing. Absolutely makes no sense to me. Every aspect of the story is just completely bullcrap. It's all based on speculative stuff. And again, we cannot let them control the narrative, and the way to do that is to be better than they are, and it's to defeat them with the truth, and not using their own protocols that they famously push onto everyone. All right, what's the next story that we got?
Right. This one's a big one, but Friday? Yep, this is a Friday story, and this one is a large one, Luke, and it's not really a story to me or you. It's just a story nationally. This is the National Review. Exclusive: Obama administration knowingly funded a designated Al-Qaeda affiliate. Well, no frickin' kidding. No, and not a lot of people are talking about this one. I think Business Insider picked this one up off a National Review. Not seeing this on MSNBC, Luke. Weird. Not seeing it on Fox News or CNN. Weird. You'd think that Fox News would want to say something about the Obama administration funding Al-Qaeda affiliates, and anybody that has been following this knows that Al-Qaeda are basically offshoots in Syria that have created al-Nusra and ISIS, and they're the same frickin' people, and we're arming them. Why else do they have AK-47s and Chevy trucks, Luke? Come on, man. Wake it up, folks. And this is a big, extensive article. This is not Jason Burmis saying it. This isn't the al-Nusra group. In fact, I'm going to have to... Well, why don't I just read the first paragraph here for people, okay? The Middle East Forum had discovered that the Obama administration approved a grant of $200,000, which is minimal, folks. They were given so much more money, trust me, of taxpayer money to an Al-Qaeda affiliate in Sudan a decade after the U.S. Treasury designated it as a terrorist financing organization. More stunningly, the government officials specifically authorized the release of at least $115,000 of this grant, even after learning that it was designated to the terror organization. And again, this should not be news to people that were paying attention, Luke. Break it down.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, if it's not for if it wasn't for taxation, How would we fund the roads? The little bit that they take for some of the roads that they do a really bad, horrible job at, that Domino's is actually better at them in a private industry, when the majority of the taxpayer money is going to the war industry. And horrible projects of your enemy is your enemy foreign policy doctrine that is just utterly idiotic and really just ultimately set to deceive the people for ulterior motives that screw everyone over. I mean, we knew about this for a very long time. We've been talking about ISIS even before they got as prominent as they did inside of Syria. There's a very important interview that I did with David Icke talking about these radical Islamic terrorists, which are being supported by the United States, which we all knew was being supported by the United States, openly calling for global jihad. And then what do you have? A global expansion of global jihad. And this happens with Saudi Arabia. And you have to understand the programming of this is still continuing. The duplicitous propaganda that is there to make you unaware of these things is extremely strong. They try to, again, shape the narrative so these issues are never truly, really understood and discussed. But if you want them to end, you have to hold these people accountable for their horrible actions, including what Obama's administration did, including what Hillary Clinton, lock her up. Hillary Clinton, she's still free, wearing really weird dresses and dining set covers that she wears there. But hold those people accountable for funding the worst monsters that are out there in this world. And then, and the only real way to do that is to bring attention to it, which, of course, a lot of people won't do. So this is a very, very important story. Again, we've been talking about it for years, even before ISIS was as prominent as they are. Seeing it unfold was just disastrous, because you know, when you're going down the road and having to pay tolls on top of the original taxation that you have to pay for the roads, you really truly understand that in a very extreme small percentage of your extortion goes towards that road, and most of it goes towards this. And it's horrible and it's monstrous. Sorry, I had to make it political. All right, we got one last story this Saturday that we want to cover.
Yep. And, you know, this is a big story for me because it just shows how ruthless the Israeli Mossad is. They are the most proficient assassins over the past decade with 800 operations worldwide. Okay, I want that to sink in. Okay, so now we're in 2018, Luke. This is from 2008, because I know there's going to be a lot of Israel did 9/11 in the comments. And again, in Fabled Enemies, there's a 20-minute section of the Israeli involvement in 9/11 with the art students, with the infiltration of government bases, with the dancing Israelis, Odago, the moving company, urban moving systems. I'm aware of all of it. That's almost 20 years ago now. That's 17 years ago. That happened. 800 operations, okay? And they even highlight some of the operations in the 70s where they got somebody into the inner circle of the sheik and they were poisoning his toothpaste, and eventually he died a horrible, painful death over time where he was like bleeding from his internal organs. Did he do? So they snuck somebody into the inside inner circle of this sheik's organization, found an identical toothpaste container, put poison into that one, swapped them out, and as he brushed his teeth, he poisoned himself to death. I think it took a month or so, and he ended up dying. That's just one of the many, many, many different tools in their tool set. And I want to remind everybody, as far as the size physically of Israel, geographically, it is not that large. But let me tell you, their black operations are very large and influential indeed.
I'm not brushing my teeth tonight, Jason. You just crap out of
me. You've got to read this one. You know, I'm going to scroll through a little bit. This is the victim of that. If you're looking at the screen here, I believe it's Wadi Haddad is the toothpaste victim. Guys, you've really, really got to read this. I know Steven Spielberg's made some movies on their operations, but the Israeli Mossad is truly, and yeah, by the way, they've done the hypnosis, they've done the mind control, they use the Frank Sinatra version of the Manchurian Candidate to show you an example in this article. But Israel is highly proficient in black operations, sabotage, and assassinations, Luke.
This happened 40 years ago, Jason.
Yeah.
So just imagine the stuff that we don't know about, like, right now.
Yeah.
It's just terrifying.
Yeah, 800 in the past 10 years that we know about, and we know that they're pretty secretive. So think about the multiple on that. Is it 800? Is it 1,000? Is it 8,000? Man, I just don't know. And again, this is governments going awry. There is no checks and balances for this type of behavior in Israel, in the United States. I would say our Central Intelligence Agency, our FBI, our NSA, our Homeland Security. I know that there's the NGA, you know, non-government organizations, NGO. Who knows? But I can tell you that we are also heavily involved in these type of operations. Luke, let me hit these 2 super chats, and then I'm going to let you finish it up. Turbo Pepper.
Finish up. Let's just finish up this story and then go over to the super chats and then try to end it there. But, you know, obviously there are very sinister, bad people in the world, and they do need to be dealt with. To me, the argument is always, do we use unaccountable, secretive methods to get to them? And to me, with the sophisticated police tactics and advanced weaponry that we have, that's not really that necessary, because it opens a Pandora box of an agency with unlimited money that has been caught doing a lot of sinister things with no accountability at all, with no checks and balances at all. Jason, because of government. That's something I wouldn't want. It's a very scary thing to think about, because obviously just even talking about it or going up against these people, you're most likely, put on the little database list that they have there, like, oh, he's a foe. It's very, very fascinating that, the way that they handle their operations. obviously, bad people do need to be dealt with, but becoming bad when you're fighting bad people, it's not a good thing, especially when you have an unlimited check and the license to do whatever you want. And a lot of these secretive organizations have, and they truly, truly, truly need to be stopped in some of their reckless actions that we have seen demonstrated throughout history. No accountability leads to a lot of trouble, and we've seen a lot of it. Okay, that's my take. Anything else you want to say about this specific story, Jason?
No, that's pretty much it, my friend. You know, again, like you said, you need accountability, you need checks and balances. We can't have a different set of rules for some people and others, because then you do have an organization, like you said, that just gets out of control, that's funded with this black hole that has no accountability, and what do? Whatever they want, Luke.
That's because of government. Super chat. Let's get to the super chats. We got one by Turbo Pepper.
Turbo
he
Pepper.
Says, thank you. What?
Turbo Pepper, not Turbo.
Turbo Pepper.
Turbocharged Pepper.
Turbo Pepper. Is that a thing? Is that a thing in the 80s or something?
I don't know. I know that Turbo is. I don't know about Turbo Pepper. Maybe you like spicy food, man. Maybe it's a hot sauce. I don't know.
Okay. All right. And he's saying, thank you, Luke and Jason. A big fan. Well, thank you, Turbo. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you and your super chat. So thank you, brother. James P. says, great job as usual, guys. Don't ever stop pushing back on the narrative. And no, hell no, we're not stopping. I'm very stubborn. We're both Leos. Our birthdays are just a few days apart. If we disagree with you, we're going to let you know. But if you try to silence us, you won't win. It won't happen. To my last breath, I'm always going to be speaking my truths and what I see, and the most important aspects that are usually kept away from you, because there are certain agendas out there, there are certain narratives pushed out there that just are meant to screw you over, and it's really maniacal if you think about it on such a bigger level, where they're running such a Ponzi scheme, they're running such an operation that literally you're sitting there and it devalues the money that you have worked so hard for, that they, every single year, take away from you to finance some of the worst horrible atrocities in the world. And that's why, Jason, taxation is theft, and it is extortion, and government is mafia. Yeah, so that's my take on it.
Well, thank you so much, because again, we can't do this without you and without your support, both Turbo Pepper and James P. We will always push against the narrative, and yes, I think more speech is always better. And like we discussed today, me and Luke don't agree on everything, but we agree on enough that we know that we have to have voices out there. And you know, I think that I came to the side of InfoWars and Alex Jones today, but at the same time, I pointed out some things that I don't like. And the bottom line is, the more honest you can be with other people, the more honest you are being with yourself. And that's why it is so important to say that government is necessary on some level.
A broken clock is right twice a day, Jason.
One more super chat. We got one more. We can go to that. Jesse Schmidt. Jesse, you're killing it lately. Thank you for just watching the show, let alone getting in on the super chats every week. Always enjoy the show when I can watch. Appreciate the debate between you two guys regarding Jason's love for government. Just joking, of course. Have a great week. Listen, by no means do I want to be subservient or do I love government, but I understand
after
why
this video, Jason Burmis is going to go out into the street and hug the road. They're going to be hugging.
My road got ripped up this week. I don't even have concrete out there. I've got yellow cones. So actually, the roads are getting taken care of, Luke, here in Little Oneonta, New York. It's very odd. I don't know. I don't know who's paying for it.
Maybe Domino's. Most likely Domino's.
It is right down the street.
Yeah. You know, right now, Domino's, a private pizza company, is doing a better job than a lot of local governments out there when it comes to fixing the potholes. So again, there's always answers, there's always solutions, but one of the major things, I know a lot of the ideas that I talk about could seem very grandiose and, you know, bam, tomorrow we have no government, the government doesn't exist, but that's not really what I'm advocating. What I'm advocating is slowly moving away and taking care of your own responsibilities without using someone with a gun and the threat of force to do your bidding or to push a certain agenda or to do something that benefits one person but hurts other people. And it's going to be a process, and I think accountability and responsibility on many different levels, voting with your dollar, voting with your attention, voting with your clicks is one great way to get there. And to me, ultimately, I think espousing these ideas, these kind of grand ideas of that I've been saying and making a point to tell you, Jason, would kind of bring us there and make people realize, like, hey, yeah, this is not a good deal that we have here, and I think we have a better one, and I'm always going to be striving for a better life, a better world, and everything better all around, because the only reason why we don't have things that are better is because of government.
Oh,
seriously,
oh, okay.
Is there one thing that government has made better?
Yes.
One thing.
Yes, man. Listen, just electing a sheriff in the 1800s, without that, we wouldn't have the Deadwood movie coming out. The series may have been canceled prematurely, but Hollywood is giving me a reboot. But seriously, I'm giving you the sheriff example, okay? Yes, in the Wild West, somebody could walk up to you and say, hey, I like your house and your wife, shoot you in the head, and guess what? They had your house and your wife, Luke. It wasn't until the sheriff got voted in, and we had a thing called a jail cell that if somebody did that, they'd go arrest that person. So again, I'm not saying that I love government. I'm saying it is a necessary evil, and it needs to be checked and balanced, and it needs to be of and for the people. It needs to be decentralized. Anarchy does not work. The non-aggression principle is not real because we're human beings. You know, that's like Peter Joseph's argument, that if everybody has the same thing, it is, man. Think about it. Everybody has the same car and the nice house and everything else, and everybody's going to, you know, it's all about nurture. There is no nature, and we're going to live in this utopian society. I got news for you. It's not going to happen because somebody's going to want to bang your wife. Your neighbor's never going to be happy, even if he has everything else the same, and neither will you. There will always be conflict. The non-aggression principle is ridiculous.
I never agree with the necessary evil. I think we could do a lot better. What if the sheriff got an unlimited black budget, could do whatever he wants, could shoot anyone he wants in the face, import some cocaine, spread it around poor communities, as well as financing the worst terrorists all over the entire world? What are you going to say if that sheriff, maybe for some lucky reason, he may clean up your street once, slightly, insignificantly, but does all these other things? And to me,
you elect a new one. You elect a new one next time.
Evil, and it is something that, again, I'm not thinking about some utopian change in a heartbeat and tomorrow everything's gone. I'm talking about the slow kind of dissolvement of using someone to do your bidding and being a responsible human being, being responsible for yourself, and slowly moving away from the control grid systems and supporting systems that are open source, that are decentralized. Anything, when it gets too big, it needs to be stopped. Government, private industries, whenever they get to become such a monopoly, whether it's Amazon or the federal government, no, absolutely no. Limit government as much as you can, and I say slowly limit it until it doesn't exist and we could live in a harmonious place where people could actually respect each other as human beings. It sounds very utopian, it won't happen overnight, but where people have communities and decide how they want to live together without some butthole coming in here, putting a gun to your head and saying, I will put you in a cage or kill you if you have a freaking plastic straw or if you dare to misgender someone.
Oh, boy. All right, listen, man, you know what? My favorite part...
Yeah, I understand your opinion, I respect your opinion, but I totally disagree with it.
Yeah, and my favorite part is the fact that people in the chats don't agree either. There's people that got your back, there's people that's got my back. Some people are calling you naive, some people are calling me naive, but I'm just going to say this, man. You go down to New York City, and you go down to, doesn't matter, Harlem, Queens, Brooklyn, anywhere. Spend like...
You'll become an anarchist overnight.
No way. No way. You'll be begging for the police. Get on the subway. Come on, man. Listen, again, we're going to have to agree to disagree on this one. I think, unfortunately, some government...
It is late, though. It is like 2, what is it?
Oh,
it's
we
like
just
2
got
o'clock in the morning.
awesome super chat. Let's read it before we go, and then I'll let you sign off. Government is not necessarily an evil thing. The answer is small government. Each state should have their own government. Here's a bit of money. Hey, Knock, thank you for agreeing with my position to close it out.
Thank you for all the other super chats that agreed with my position.
And not in imagination land. Listen, I don't think that anything's going to be done overnight. I definitely think that this system needs to be improved. And the more decentralization of power, the better. I'm going to wrap it up there. Tell everybody out there, thank you guys so much, especially for being so active this week. I think that we have a much better time when the conversation is with you folks. And I just want to say thanks for everything. I've been having a blast the last 5-6 months doing this full time. It's actually going to be 5 months next week, Luke, that I've been doing this full time. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. I really love being up on information and sharing it with all you people. Whether you hate on my opinion or love on my opinion, I'm glad I have an opinion that's worth looking at, Luke.
Yeah, I'm reading some of the comments. Luke is tremendously idealistic. Jason is naive. Know the difference. The comments here are great. Luke, you are dumb and definitely wrong. Again, it's okay. Words only have power if you give them power. And remember to choose your words wisely, to choose your ideas, your thoughts very carefully, because they ultimately decide the future pathway that you're going to be on. Choose a good pathway. Spend time with your family. Enjoy life. Hear different opinions. Don't get butthurt about things you disagree with. Have a conversation and learn, progress, build, and move forward in life, which we should. And government is the only reason why it's not happening. I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for a lot more. And we're going to be back here every single Sunday. Jason, thank you again for joining me as well.